All right, what's up? What's happening, YouTube? The Hoffman Show live, normally at this time on the Team 980, but Maryland is busy getting their absolute behinds kicked by Wisconsin, and thus we are not on the radio yet. But with news like this, we absolutely could not wait to get on. So here's how this is going to work. If you are watching live on the Team 980, you are in the right place for the duration of the radio show, which will eventually be on the radio sometime shortly after 5 o'clock. Also at 5 o'clock, whether we're on the radio or not, Charles Davis is going to join us from NFL Network. If you are watching on my YouTube page, at Craig Hoffman, then you're good for right now. But when we go live on the radio, we are going to end the stream there, and you will have to flip over at the Team 980. Of course, you can listen on the radio or on the free Odyssey app or watch on the Team 980's YouTube page. So that is how things are rolling right now for us, purely in a digital forum, and we couldn't wait to get on the air. Normally we're on the air at 4 o'clock. Today I was like, great, relax till 5 o'clock. And then about 20 minutes ago, the Commanders traded Sam Howell. That's right, last year's starter, threw for nearly 4,000 yards, had a really remarkable year in so many ways considering his pedigree, goes to Seattle, and I think there's so much to talk about here. And we'll obviously take calls on this later in the show once we are live on the radio. In the meantime, we'll take a peek at the comments section and react because that's as good as we can do in terms of comments right now or calls right now. But some thoughts for me first. First and foremost, this is good value for Sam Howell. And you look at the quarterback trade market and people wanted to say, Mac Jones went for a 6th. There's no way that Sam Howell is going to get a 4th or a 3rd or anything in return of value. You might as well just hold on to him. And if that was the case, that he wasn't going to get a 5th or a 6th round pick in return, then you absolutely should have held on to him. But here's the thing about Sam Howell and Mac Jones. Sam Howell's way better, was way more liked in the locker room, and he costs a lot less. Mac Jones was a 1st round pick. He makes real money. Sam Howell was a 5th round pick. He makes NFL dirt. I would love to make Sam Howell's salary, but I work in radio, not as an NFL quarterback. So, relatively speaking, the value was much higher for Howell, both in terms of the monetary return and the impact on your salary cap, and, by the way, the quality and caliber of player that you are getting. I would much rather have Sam Howell than Mac Jones, and clearly so would the rest of the NFL based off what they ultimately got traded for. Howell gets, in return, a 3rd rounder. Now, it's not straight Howell for 3rd rounder. It's pick 78 and 152, which is a 4th. In return, you have one of the first picks in the 4th round, number 102, and a 6th rounder, 179, going back with Howell to Seattle. So ultimately, it's kind of like trading him for a 4th. But here's the other part of this. Here is hey, let's go a little bit deeper and talk about what this value really is for Sam Howell in return in this draft. This is, by a lot of accounts, about a 90-player draft. Not that there won't be guys that go higher than 90 that are maybe even NFL superstars, but nevertheless NFL starters. But the depth of this draft, because of the confluence of COVID years, NIL keeping a lot of guys in school longer, and kind of the end of the COVID years now in 2024, the last remaining guys who were 6th years still have them. I guess for a couple of more years, you might have some guys who were freshmen and lost their 2020 season, or freshmen and lost their 2020 season that still have another year or two beyond what you would think they would be in terms of schooling. But at the end of the day, a lot of guys have stayed in school longer, and the depth of quality in this draft, there's a drop-off. A lot of people think around 90 guys. So you had pick 102, which if someone fell out of your 90, cool, great. But now you've guaranteed it, because now you got pick 78 to go with the rest of your picks. You got 2, 36, 40, 67, and 78, and 100, by the way. You got that compensatory pick from San Francisco that came in the other day that we learned was pick 100. So you got 2, 36, 40, 67, 78, 100. That is 6 picks, really quality football players that you are likely getting in the top 100 picks. That is incredibly valuable. And that pick 78 could be one of two things. It could be a starter, whether present or future, but it also could be a trade chip. because I've talked about this quite a bit. If you haven't heard on Take Command, or you haven't heard this on the show yet, there is, I think, a floating narrative. We talked about it yesterday with Linnell. There's a floating narrative that, oh, you could package 36 and 40 and go up and get into the 20s and take a tackle. Only if you're an idiot. Not because that's not a good idea in terms of packaging picks to go up, but because if you package 36 and 40, you get to about pick 13. Not pick 21, not pick 25, not pick 29. Per the Jimmy Johnson draft chart, you get to about 13. And now you have the freedom to add another starter quality body and have another pick that you could package. So now if you do package 30s, even your two higher of the clumped picks, right? Because we have two, obviously, quarterback there. 36, 40, close together. 67, 78, relatively close together. Even if you want to take 36 and 67, players that you were targeting in that range now are still available to you, and you could get a second first rounder. This, I would say, I feel stronger now about this than I did a month ago, when I feel like I was one of the first people to say that I feel really strongly that they are not going to use all these picks as they currently are, that they are going to trade up somewhere. And I think when you look at the roster so far, the moves that they've made, the landscape of this draft, it just makes too much sense for them not to trade up into the first round and get a second first-round player, most likely, in my humble opinion, a left tackle. And what this allows you to do is it gives you more ammo to do that and more flexibility to do that, depending on where you want to trade. Because let's say 36 and 67, okay, well, that was going to get me up to the high 20s. But let's say I don't feel that. The way the board falls, maybe there's a run on some defensive players we don't expect. Some of the tackles start to fall, and you think Tyler Guyton's going to be available out of Oklahoma. I'll use him as an example, right? At 27 instead of 21. Well, now you call up whoever's got 27. I don't have the draft order in front of me. And you go, hey, what about 36 and 78 or 40 and 78 instead of having give up that 67th pick? And so you can go back a little bit, slightly less valuable on the trade chart, but still enough to get your guy. Or, again, if you want to, you can still pull the big one and go 36 and 40 packaged together, and you can go up and get J.C. Latham. You can go get Amarius Mims. God forbid, Olu Fashanu or Joe Alt falls out of the top 10. You can go up and try to get one of those guys. You have extra ammo. That is so valuable in this draft, and especially in the top 100 when everybody thinks that's where the stars are in this draft. And the stars, and I should say the stars and starters in this draft, are going to be at that point. So very, very exciting to me in terms of the return. Obviously, there is a giant kind of what-if question around Sam that I think we should tackle coming up here in about 5 minutes. In terms of like, what is he as kind of what's his commander story? Like, now we can write the commander's obit on Sam Howell in a way that feels almost silly because it was so early. But I think that in a prediction of what he ultimately winds up being elsewhere. So we can get to the Howell piece of it in a second. But I think this just continues a prudent way to go about things from Adam Peters and company in terms of what you get in return. And the last thing I'll say about this for now, obviously on till 7 o'clock tonight, I'll give everybody, again, the rundown of where you can find us. We're in a weird digital universe at the moment entirely with Maryland on the radio. But Peters has talked about wanting to build through the draft. In order to build through the draft, you need draft picks. And again, whether it's for flexibility or just maybe they do wind up staying put. Maybe the guys that they want start to fall, and you get the flexibility to take a lot of good football players now that you think are the right guys. And I think that is so huge when we talk about where Washington is, because very clearly they don't like this roster. And my big question when this group got hired was, are they going to watch the tape and go, oh, these guys were not well coached, but we got a bunch of good players? Or are they going to be like, man, I don't know what the old guard was doing in terms of player selection. I think it's pretty clear. There's an element of bothness to it. They didn't keep that many of the coaches, but they also very much seem to want a different kind of player. And I think some of this is we want different players because we don't think these guys were good. And I think some of this is also like we just need the idea that it's fresh. We do not want this place to feel remotely what it felt like last year. And I think a guy like Kendall Fuller, who just signed, by the way, in Miami on a 2-year deal, is a great example. Kendall Fuller's a good football player. There's no reason not to want Kendall Fuller on your football team unless you want to shake up your room. Unless you want to look at your cornerback position and look at Emmanuel Forbes and Quan Martin, who contractually are here, unless you want to pop a trade like you just did for Sam and try to get something in return. But your best bet is to keep them here, and they're both good young football players, and put a different vet in the room with them. There's value in that for the tight end room, for Zach Ertz coming in. Or I think a great example, Logan pointed to this when we talked about it on Take Command this morning, is Austin Eckler in the running back room. Who knows what Austin Eckler is going to be as a player? Hopefully, he's Austin Eckler of 2 years ago, and he's one of the better running backs in the NFL. But even if he's not, if you just brought Antonio Gibson back, it's the same room. Where's the impetus, the kick in the butt, the fire, the new perspective outside of the coaching staff, but within the locker room, within that team room for a guy like Brian Robinson? Now, he's going through all the offseason being like, shoot, I got Austin Eckler on my tail. That dude led the NFL in touchdowns a couple years ago. And he's a vet who knows and sets the example. And every single snap, every single rep, every single weight room workout, every single on-field workout will be setting an example for Brian Robinson to watch. And whether he's a hands-on mentor type or whether he's just saying, like, this is how it goes, that shakeup is real. And obviously, the most cost-efficient way to shake up everything is through the draft. And now you've added more picks. You have gotten more guys that you think will probably be around on your roster, on your 53 next year. Sam Howell traded to Seattle for picks number 78 and 152, 102 and 179 go out the door with him. When we get back, thoughts on Howell and kind of where he's at this point in his career. And again, Charles Davis, NFL Network, will join us coming up at 5 o'clock here on The Hoffman Show. Welcome back. It's the Hoffman Show. We are not on the Team 980, but we will be soon, waiting for Maryland basketball to wrap up their season coming to an end against Wisconsin. So we are live on YouTube right now at the Team 980, and we are also live at Craig Hoffman. If you missed the very start of the show, here is how this is going down with us not being on the radio quite yet. We are simulcasting, a little preview, if you will, of what the live show actually looks like if you are a subscriber or watching currently on my page at Craig Hoffman. When we go live on the radio, we are ending the feed. And you can, if you want to keep watching on YouTube, you can, just like you can every single day at the Team 980. So if you're not subscribed and or you want to go ahead and switch over now so your feed is uninterrupted, or do that in the next commercial break, highly recommend doing that. So we are live on the Team 980 all 3 hours of the show every single day. So all the way till 7 o'clock tonight. And then on at Craig Hoffman, we'll post the highlights and everything as usual, but the live streaming version of this will end coming up at, well, whenever we go live on the radio. We don't know exactly when that is going to be yet. Maryland and Wisconsin, I think, is wrapped now, but we still got the post-game show, and they're wrapping up the season on the Maryland Sports Network, et cetera, et cetera. So off we continue, and we'll get to some comments here in a second. Perusing some of them in the break, and some of y'all are really happy, and some of y'all are oddly angry, which is kind of the nature of things on the internet, I guess. But at the end of the day, Sam Howell gets traded to the Seattle Seahawks. Great move, I think, for Washington. They didn't add any picks, but they added another top 90 pick, which is huge in this particular draft, as we just talked about over the last 15 minutes or so. But I will say to the people who are howling, literally and figuratively, in the comments, I get it. This feels very unfair and unjust for Sam. Sam Howell's a talented football player. I think Sam Howell can be a starting quarterback in this league. And that is not me being stubborn about my opinion on him in the middle of the year, where I thought he was clearly on path to be the starter of the future. But it's because I saw what it was. Like, the flashes of good are tremendous. And I think that he was coached horrendously last year. And specifically, I think he was coordinated horrendously last year. Obviously, he was coached well enough that the new staff got here and was like, Tavita Pritchard, quarterback coach, let's keep him around. Very highly thought of. And I think a lot of the good stuff that happened for Sam is clearly given to Tavita. And the bad stuff that happened on Sam, narrative-wise, is put on EB. I don't know how fair that is in totality. That seems obscene, that everything good was the responsibility of one coach and everything bad was the other. But I can tell you, as a play caller, the gigantic responsibility of that, Eric Bieniemy failed Sam Howell in a way that was so spectacular, I just didn't think it was possible. I didn't think it was possible for an OC to take a quarterback who has a sack problem, which Sam does and did, and I would say more so did. He got better at it as the year went, to his credit. Other issues arose, but that got better. And drop him back in pure drop back progression passing more than any other quarterback in the league. I mean, he wound up with one more attempt than Mahomes, I think, by the end of last year. That's obscene. How could you possibly think that that is a good idea? It is so overexposing, so under supporting a young player at any position, nevertheless that position. And so for those of you that are like, I'm upset because I think Sam could be good, I get it. I actually truly understand that feeling, because there is a huge piece of me, and that piece is called curiosity, that wants to know, that wants to see in, by the way, an offense that I think fits Sam really well. Theoretically, what Cliff does, a lot of down the field passing, vertical passing game. Sam's got a good arm, throws a good deep ball. He's got some mobility, can get out on the edge. You know, he's not afraid to sit back there, but hopefully with a lot more easy throws than what he was given last year. And see what happens. But here's the catch. Here's why I love this move. Because it's not Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury's responsibility to find out. It's not their responsibility to find out how good Sam Howell is. Their job is to do what's best for the Washington Commanders. And what's best for the Washington Commanders is to, instead of taking a flyer on this 5th-round pick that definitely showed he's better than a guy who went in the 1st round in Mac Jones, who might not even be an NFL quarterback, to show that he's better than another guy who went in the 1st round, maybe in Kenny Pickett, who's, probably the closest guy in that draft class to having made some inroads of being a decent player so far, but he just got replaced by Russell Wilson. Instead of taking this flyer and seeing if it could work, they're going to take the number 2 pick, use their scouting abilities, use their coaching abilities, reset the clock. Because here's the other thing about Sam. He's now played 2 years. Everyone's like, oh, he was basically a rookie, except for the contract. Contract was real. Contract years told. He's after this year in a lame duck year and probably looking for an extension if he were to start again and play well. And so instead of dealing with all of that and taking that gigantic risk, when you have, in the eyes of many, an incredibly rich crop of quarterbacks and the number 2 pick, you start over. It's the most obvious thing in the world. Like, we don't need to overthink this. Now, are there other alternative paths they could theoretically take? Sure. They could have said, we're gonna run it back with Sam, and we're gonna give him Marvin Harrison Jr. or Joe Alt or whatever, and we're gonna build the team. And if Sam's good, then we won the lottery, and if he's not, then we'll probably be in this position again next year. But at least we'll have hopefully a future Hall of Famer that we drafted at 2 this year. You could have done that, but that's not really how you're wanting to start the rebuild. And so you go sign a veteran, a Marcus Mariota, who I thought was great today when he met with the press. We'll probably play some clips of that a little bit later in the show. But Mariota said, like, if I'm called upon to start, I'll be ready to start. If I'm called on to be a mentor, I'm ready to mentor, which is what I want to hear from my backup veteran quarterback. That he understands it's not about him. That it is truly about this number 2 pick. And at this point in his career, like, hey, Marcus, you had a good run. It's time for you to usher in the next generation. So you make that move. And I would tell you as the fans the same thing that I just said about Mariota. It's not about Marcus Mariota. Just like this would have never been about Sam Howell. If Sam stayed and was the starter this year because Drake May or Jaden Daniels wasn't ready and Howell beat out Marcus Mariota, he's still just biding time for that guy to be ready. So you can instead get someone who's going to help the other guy and help your team at pick 78. Cool. Let's do that instead. And if Marcus Mariota comes in and let's say something wacky happens. Let's say Geno Smith pulls a hamstring in training camp. Sam Howell plays for Seattle. And Marcus Mariota winds up starting here because the number 2 pick isn't ready yet. And Mariota plays like dog you-know-what. I guess I could have really said it because we're on the internet. Anyway, I'm gonna stay in character here as a radio host because our show will be broadcasting live on the radio soon. But Marcus Mariota plays like dog you-know-what. And Howell plays great. Doesn't matter. It's not about those guys. It's about Jaden Daniels. It's about Drake May or whoever else they wind up taking at quarterback with that number 2 pick. And thus, you get what you can for everything else at that position. You surround that position with the best that you can, which is a veteran mentor, which they got in Mariota, which they believe is the right guy. I think that is up for debate, but also, it's all about who will come here too. Jacoby Brissett, I doubt wanted to come back. And I understand that. And so that's what this is about. It's not about Sam. The part that's about Sam, I'm super curious. I wish him nothing but the best. I liked watching him work. I liked watching him try to problem solve. I wish he did a better job. So does he. Did he get screwed by the coaching? Yeah, I think he did. I think coaching was terrible last year. Awful. Inexcusably bad, to be frank. And yet, it was good enough to get a 3rd-round pick in return for the Commanders as they really move up pick swap style, both moving up from 102 to 78 and moving up from 179 to 152 in the upcoming NFL draft, where they hopefully can find some more starters and a couple of special teamers with those later picks and continue to rebuild this roster in the way that Adam Peters wants to, which I think a lot of us trust based off his track record, to be pretty darn good within the next couple of years. It's the Hoffman Show. We are streaming live at the Team 980. We are also currently streaming live at Craig Hoffman. Again, once we go live on the radio, which will be in the next half hour, once Maryland is done, and the post-game show for Maryland Hoops in the Big Ten tournament is done, that will end. So at Craig Hoffman, going goodbye. Now is a great time, as I'm about to toss to a commercial break before we get to Charles Davis coming up in just over 3 minutes. Now would be a good time to close this stream. If you're at Craig Hoffman, go to at the Team 980 if you're not already subscribed and pick us up there. That stream's not going anywhere till the rest of the show. So quick break. I'm going to call Charles. We'll get him on the horn, and then we'll come right back here on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We are live on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And shout out to everybody watching on YouTube. We started the show actually 30 minutes ago there because we had breaking news and we just couldn't wait to be on the radio, but happy to be on the Team 980 and full bore now. Gave some initial thoughts on the breaking news that Sam Howell has been traded to the Seattle Seahawks, and we're going to hit the ground running with a great analyst who can help talk about this move and also what the Commanders can do with the draft picks they acquired. More from the NFL Network. Charles Davis is with us. Charles, how are you, man?
I mean, you've got stuff just breaking left and right in D.C. My goodness. Sam Howell to the Seahawks. Drew Lock obviously went to the Giants, so there's a need there. And based off of their new head coach in Seattle, Mike McDonald's comment about, is Geno Smith your starter and not committing? Sam Howell sounds like he's got a chance to go in and compete for the number one job.
I mean, it's wild to watch the Seattle-Washington stuff happening. McDonald obviously was a candidate here. Then Bobby Wagner leaves Seattle, comes here, obviously DQ's history. Let me just ask you this, Charles. Like, in terms of Washington, the return to get, it's really two pick swaps, but to get another top 100 pick in this draft, that 78th pick they get in return for Sam Howell, what do you make of that return for Sam?
I think it's a great return. And, you know, nowadays, I mean, you've seen what some of these deals have been, right?
Oh, yeah.
I was just reading one, and it's not the same because it's not a quarterback, but even the quarterback market is not as big as people would think, right? Malik Collins has been a good player, right? Defensive tackle, Dallas, Houston, the whole deal, right? He just makes a move. San Francisco makes a trade for him. Did you see what they gave up?
I actually missed this one. They won't stop signing players. I can't keep up with anything else, Charles.
I know. It's hard to do, right? I only caught it just because it flashed across my email. And the 49ers give up for a starting defensive tackle, which is, you know, a good commodity in this league, one of their 2 sevens this year.
Wow.
This is what I'm talking about. You know, what it's like in the off season before all these things start happening, right? When you're sitting around talking with people, they always talk about, well, you know, you think they'll get a 1 for him? You know how hard it is to get a 1 for anyone anymore?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's difficult. People think it's easy, right? That's why you hear the Carolina fans lamenting that they could have gotten 2 1s from Los Angeles last year. It was reported for Brian Burns. This year they get a 2nd and a 5th because the market changes and times change, et cetera, et cetera. But the idea of giving up 2 1s for Brian Burns, I'm still not sure I actually believe that was even on the table. But that's what it's like nowadays. Starting players are moving. We think the value is going to be huge. It's not going to be what you think it is. So to me, to get a pick at 78, I think is a big deal for Washington as they continue to build.
Charles Davis, NFL Network, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Of course, Charles, a huge part of NFL Network's draft coverage which will be live from Detroit at the end of April. Make sure you're watching all the path to the draft stuff, and then obviously Charles and company on set out there in Detroit. Charles, for you, as you've scouted this draft, how deep is this draft? Because I know in talking to a bunch of people out in Indy, it seems like some people think it's kind of a 90, 100 player draft. Like, where to you is kind of I don't want to necessarily call it a cliff. Maybe you will go as far as to call it a cliff. Where's that level off in the 2024 draft pool?
Yeah, for me, it goes a little bit higher than 90 to 100. I think there are more players in it than that. I think that it gets borne out pretty much every year when we go back and look at who became a player, who wasn't. Because remember, I'm going to bring into the pool of guys who don't get drafted, which means the pool was deeper than we thought. But those guys, for whatever reason, didn't pass the test or somehow got overlooked. You know, we have it all the time, right? So I think it's bigger than that. You know, people want to talk about it getting to a certain number. Look, we are really deep in receivers, and we'll say that probably between now and when football goes back to being a true run-first game played between the hashes, which I don't know if we'll ever get back to, right? I mean, it's just the way the game is going. Offensive linemen, really deep. Running backs, deeper than what people give it credit for, but because there's not a true first-round runner, everybody goes, linebackers are going to get the same thing. You're probably not going to get a first-round guy, but guess what? There are players to be found there. So I find the pool to be deeper than that. So if people want to put it, as you said, 90 to 100, I take it up closer to 150.
Okay. I think it's also the funny part about even the folks who will go, it's 90 to 100. They won't agree on who the 90 or 100 are.
No.
Which then pushes it to, 150 easy of, oh, yeah, that guy's in my 90. Well, he's not in mine. Okay, well, let's add him to the list. That's the nature of scouting.
So great. Thank you so much for saying that, because you just made one of the best points that we're going to need to keep repeating. So whoever's in charge of your show, please cut that right there and keep it, clip it, save it, and use it, because I'm endorsing what you said in a big way. And here's what I'm going to tell you. When you sit down to do your mock drafts, right, and I have to do a certain number, okay? I'm contracted to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Before I started doing it and I started talking with people at the Combine and other places, just what you said came out to be true. If I was going to say, okay, here are my 32 guys that are going into the mock draft, when you ask different people, is he a first rounder? Is he a first rounder? Is he going to get picked in the first round? Is he going to get picked in the first round? By the time I was done, it's probably double that. And there can't be 64 guys in the first round, right? There's only 32. But when you talk to people, just what you just said right there comes ringing true all the time. So when people tell you 90 to 100, as you said, who are you asking? If you take everyone's 90 to 100, that pool's a lot bigger than what people have given it credit for. Same thing about who are going to be the 32 guys that go in the first round. I easily got 60-plus names. Easily. Where they're like, oh, yeah, I think he can go in the first round. But there's only 32. There's only 32 they're going to go. Who are they?
Right.
It's draft night.
Yeah, it's funny, too, you mentioned you kind of realize just how many there are during mock drafts. So we do some on our podcast, and I do it with former NFL player Logan Paulson is my co-host. And
yeah.
Logan, I wake up at this time of year to about 2 or 3 film clips a morning of Logan. You got to check out this guy. Watch how he spins it in this game. Watch this.
Right.
And so we're doing our latest one just after the Combine, and he's like in disbelief at the mock draft simulator we're using for the non-commanders picks. He's like, there's no way it goes like that. There's no way these guys will all be here as we look at those early second rounders. And I'm like, if you say that every time we do this, inevitably some of these guys will be, because you can't, someone's got to fall. And so it is funny how that tends to happen, which is why every single year the draft feels often, I think, crazier if you just look at a lot of mock drafts than obviously if you talk to people within the league.
And I'll put a cap on it for you and I, because I know we probably want to move on.
Yeah.
Here's the deal with that. There are going to be 32 players that go in the first round. Not all 32 had a first-round grade as a consensus across the league. That's always the kicker to this thing. When you're said and done and you put guys up on your boards in 32 different draft rooms, there will not be 32 players that have first-round grades in almost any draft room. But 32 have to be picked because that's how it goes. So you're a first-rounder when you get picked, but you may not have had a first-round grade. And that's why it's funny. It's fun for us to have this conversation. And if Logan wants to blow up my thing with film clips on different guys, please give him my number. I need all the help I can get.
I will pass that along to Logan. I'm sure he would love to. Just be careful what you wish for. That's all I'm saying.
I know that feeling, but you know something? I'd rather weed through it than not have enough. And tell him, please, that guy from Rose Holman that's going to go in the 7th round that we don't see coming, I'd love to have that film clip on him early, please.
Love it. Charles Davis, NFL Network, is our guest. And Charles, as much as we talk about the depth, I think you know that the fans that are listening to this show here in D.C., they only really care about one pick, and that's at number 2.
Number 2.
Where are you at on the quarterbacks behind Caleb Williams, presuming that he goes to Chicago at 1?
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, the crew, making the decisions up there. Martin Mayhew's still there, the whole deal about who's going to be that number 2. But I think, to me, it's down to 2 guys, because let's just play the game very easily. Based on every smoke signal we've got going right now, doesn't it feel like it's Caleb Williams and Chase at this point? Right? It's the Bears are going to take Caleb Williams, and off we go from there.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's what it feels like. I don't know that it's true, but I have a hard time believing it's not true. And I always have an adage about this time of year. You know what it is? Whoever's been the number 1 pick, the purported number 1 pick for a long time, like Andrew Luck was and Trevor Lawrence was and all that, for like 2 years, they're going to be the number 1 pick. About this time of year, we start nitpicking them. Mm-hmm. And we bring somebody up to challenge them, 1 or 2 players. Okay, for Andrew Luck, it was Robert Griffin. I forgot who it was for Trevor Lawrence. You know what I'm saying, right?
Right.
And right now, what should be happening is we should be talking about Drake May or Jaden Daniels being the number one pick, are you really hearing it? I'm really not. Like, this is one time we're not getting that type of a deal. So let's just do it at 2, because at 2, that's when the debate begins. Do you like Daniels? Do you like Drake May? I've heard a little bit of the J.J. McCarthy thing jumping in later. I don't feel like it's a full-scale, full-throated deal. I think it's Daniels and Drake May. They're going to have to figure that out. But I've been saying, and I think it's something I'll probably continue to say, Dan Campbell comes in with defensive coordinator chops. What drives defensive coordinators crazy? Quarterbacks who can truly run the football. Not just scramble and catch a first down here and there. I'm talking about can beat you with their legs. That's Jaden Daniels. I'm not saying Drake May can't run it. He can. But Daniels is as close to what Lamar Jackson brings to you running as you can get without being Lamar Jackson, because he's not Lamar.
Right.
But he's as close as we've had since Lamar. And that's why I think Dan Quinn, when it's all said and done, when Adam Peters looks at him and says, which one for you, he would say Jaden Daniels, because as a defensive coordinator, that's who hurts you most. A lot of defensive coordinators hire offensive coordinators who run offenses that drive them crazy trying to prepare for it. See how it works? That's me overthinking it. That's me trying to get into the mind of Dan Quinn. But it's also experience and education. I've been doing these games for a long time. I've sat with defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators. I've heard what they've talked about. What I've just told you is a universal with defensive coordinators. They hate quarterbacks who can truly run the football, meaning I'd rather have him on my team than chase him around.
Charles Davis, NFL Network analyst, of course, also does the play-by-play with Ian Eagle, our good friend, on CBS. Ian told me, by the way, Charles, that your 70s and 80s TV show knowledge is undefeated.
Well, it's actually defeated by him.
Oh,
that's the best part. Is he puts it? I love how he slaps that on me, and I love it. I appreciate it. But I've not been able to hit one over the net that he hasn't returned yet. So I'm still waiting. I'm still searching. I'm still looking. I've got to come up with that one obscure TV show that one night he may have missed. But so far, everything I hit at him, it comes back with pace.
He's a smart cookie, that Ian Eagle. Smart.
Oh, it's hard to get past him. And by the way, big congrats to my partners. He gets him ready to do his first Final Four for CBS. It's well deserved. And Jim Nantz is a legend and a Hall of Famer, and he retired at the end of last year. They could not have made a better selection to take over than I am.
Yeah, I'm into that. All right, a few more minutes here quickly with Charles before we let him go on his merry way, get back to the tape, or perhaps just enjoying a nice, lovely afternoon. So I think that your perspective on the D coordinator side of this is so clear and pristine and appreciated because I think you're totally right with what drives defensive coordinators crazy, because it's the thing they can't plan for. But I think, Charles, one thing that I have a theory I kind of want to run by you that some way like runs counter to that. And it's something that I've become more aware of through this draft process. And I'm curious your thoughts on it, which is that we often think of the floor and ceiling of quarterbacks as the opposite of what we should. In other words, we think of guys who can run as having higher ceilings and guys who are more in the Drake May build as having higher floors. And I actually think it's the opposite. I think a guy like Daniels is going to be able to run around in the NFL no matter if he can throw or not. And a guy like Drake May, who maybe is like Justin Herbert-y, with the arm strength and the platform off platforms and all that kind of stuff. Like, those are the guys that wind up being your Hall of Famers, because the ultimate version of that is a guy like Mahomes who can make any throw from any angle at any time. What do you make of kind of that idea of where we put floors and ceilings and what attributes should be attached to those types of things, specifically with quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent theory. I really do. And I go back to what I've said about Dan Quinn, and I stand by it, because I do feel like I understand what coaches think and how they view things and what drives them or makes them nuts at times. And I do think that Daniels coming out now versus May, that's what would keep DQ awake at night a little bit more. Defensive coordinators feel like the guys who play from the pocket they could deal with better, because it doesn't have that instant sting. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
3rd and 8, Daniels hot flips it for 10. 3rd and 8, and he has to deliver from the pocket, and he completes a pass for 17, for some reason it doesn't hurt as much. I mean, I'm just telling you, in their minds, we did everything the way we were supposed to. Boy, he made a heck of a throw. But when everything breaks down and he runs, it drives him crazy. But back to your theory, it makes perfect sense, because if you line up the guys who are in the Hall of Fame and we're saying are going to the Hall of Fame, what do they do better than anything else? They deliver the ball on time, on schedule, from the pocket. Doesn't mean they can't move. Moving is part of it. Is it a slide step to your left to create the opening and throw the football? Is it moving out 2-3 steps away to your right and throwing a little bit on the run and hitting someone? Is it creating that extra little bit of time? Then you plant your feet and throw the dart. Having some movement's a big deal, okay? All the greats had enough movement to keep plays alive just for whatever they needed. Now, Tom Brady wasn't going to scramble around and do a whole lot to keep it alive that way. But did you remember anyone with any better pocket movement?
Yeah.
Montana with his pocket movement and a little bit of footwork. Steve Young, much more of the runner. We can go on all day. But at the end of the day, where do they deliver from? Where do they make the plays? Where do they beat you? Most times, being able to throw the football, whether it's a little bit on the run, but mainly being able to step up and make that throw when it was necessary. So I think your theory holds a lot of credence. And I've heard all this stuff about Drake May, and I'm doing my work on him, what have you. I think the kid's a winner. I think the kid's a big-time player. I love the way he throws the football. And if anybody wants to talk about Herbert being a pure pocket passer, I always tell them, go back and turn on the Rose Bowl, Oregon-Washington, his last game, and watch how many times he made plays with his legs and running the football. They gave Oregon a great opportunity in that game. So, I don't think they can't do these things. But, boy, him throwing the ball is way better for his team than him taking off and running it.
No doubt. Charles Davis, NFL Network's NFL draft coverage all month long leading into the end of April when they will be live from Detroit with every single pick. Charles, this was fantastic. Hope we can do it again. Thanks so much for the time. It was great to see you briefly in Indianapolis a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it's great to see you as well. And remember what I told you. Thank you for your patience there. We're sorry we weren't able to do it as we were supposed to. And I meant what I said. We owed you double. So if you want to hit again anytime, I'm available. Thanks a lot for your time and continued success to you.
Thank you, Charles. That's Charles Davis with us here on The Hoffman Show. What a start for us here on the radio. Again, we've actually been going since about 4:30 live on YouTube because the breaking news of the day, Sam Howell and the Commanders no longer together. The Commanders have traded the starting quarterback from last year to the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, there's a ton of draft implications, so we kind of started with Sam and picked things up on the draft with Charles and Anthony. He said it on the radio. He told me that in person in Indy, but he said it on the radio. He owes us another one. I don't think he owes us. I think that's he's being very kind. He is committed to another one. So the tackle class is something I would love to talk to him about. Obviously, Charles knows DB play as well as anybody, so we'll get to all that stuff in the next couple of weeks. But Ann, are you ready to get in on the Sam Howell part of this?
Can't wait.
All right. So Ann will hop into the discussion, and so will you. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Your thoughts as Sam Howell traded to the Seahawks in a gigantic pick swap that nets the Commanders yet another top 80 pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. there, huh, Anthony?
We want Dallas!
Oh, my goodness. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And we now have a chance to get your thoughts on the breaking news of the day. Sam Howell traded to the Seattle Seahawks. Last year's starting quarterback ends his 2 years in Washington, gets exchanged for a couple of draft picks. He'll bring a couple of draft picks with him. The picks 78 and 152 coming to Washington, 102 and 179 going out. So essentially, you get better picks. You move up around in each one. 102 was a fourth, becomes 78 in the third. 179 was a sixth, becomes 152 in the fifth. And in exchange for that, moving up, you get cool. My microphone's not working. Anthony, can you hear me or no? Awesome. Fantastic. What's hilarious is the internet can hear me right now, but Anthony can't. I know. The Comrex kicked off. Give me 1 second. So Anthony's tossed into a commercial break on the radio. Everyone on the internet's just going to get a show as I try to fix this. Actually, no, I'll toss a commercial break on the internet as well. And we'll take some calls next. But we're back on the Hoffman Show, and we are getting ready to take your calls at 301-230-0980. Now that, I don't know, there's power, internet, whatever kicked off. Anthony, let's double check. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You can hear me.
Sure. I can hear you.
All right. Everybody out there in the universe, we're back. Anyway, what a wacky bit that was. Let's take some calls. 301-230-0980. What do you think of Sam Howell to the Seahawks in exchange for some draft picks? The Team 980 listener line, 301-230-0980. Let's go to Billy in Miami to get us started. Billy, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Yeah, Craig. I just got back to Miami from D.C., and I promised you I was going to do it, and I did it. I got 4 season tickets, club seats to the Washington Redskins Commanders for the first time in my life, so I'm very excited.
Wow.
So that's the first thing. I told you I was going to do it, and I did it.
Yep, I remember.
So 2 other things. In terms of Sam Howell, I liked him a lot, and I think he's going to be, he may even someday prove to be a starter. Definitely a solid backup, as solid as they come. But I think there could have been some animosity, kind of like, I don't know if this is a great example, but the RG3 Kirk thing or whatever. I like this move for GM, showing that they're going to be all in and not let there be any, focus moved around and maneuvered and so forth. And then finally, let me just finish with this. I told you last week that I wanted to have a veteran come in with senior winning type of leadership. And I kind of hoped it was Russell Wilson, but we heard a lot about this character issues. And then we brought in Mariota. I watched that, at your recommendation, I watched that Netflix special last night, and I just sped through everything just watching Mariota clips. And he was picked second in the draft. He was a Heisman Trophy winner. So that's interesting. I don't know if any of that's also telling, but he seems like a wonderful guy. The only thing that I'm kind of worried about is the whole winning thing. I'd rather have someone who knows how to win be our guy that's kind of giving the tutelage. That's it.
Thanks, Billy. Appreciate the call. I think that, yeah, obviously, like getting a winning quarterback would be great, but I think the nature of a winning quarterback is they're not available because they're winning. So, like, Russell Wilson is, I guess, the rare exception, but Kirk is the best quarterback that hits the market with any regularity, and people would say he's not a winner because, I mean, Cam Newton said it, right? I want that dude's agent. That Mamma Jamma's won one playoff game in 12 years, and he's gotten paid incredibly well. But I think it shows you how hard it is to win, especially playoff games in this league, and that teams, even if you're Dak Prescott, like, you get held on to because the chances of winning with you and you overcoming the things that you haven't done yet are better than trying to get someone else. Matthew Stafford, the Rams were like, hasn't won a lot. Fine. We know he's good. We'll take him. And they win the Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford. I think Stafford's a bit of an exception because he's so talented. He's a former number 1 overall pick who had thrown for 5,000 yards, etc. But a guy like Mariota, obviously many classes down, costs you a lot less, has done a little bit of winning, not a ton. But it's also because he's not that good as an NFL quarterback in terms of, like, is he a winning NFL quarterback? No. He plays for you. You're probably at bet if a bunch of other stuff goes right. Maybe you're a 500 team. If, like, you're insane defensively and he can just cut the turnovers, then maybe you could have a plus 500 season. But you're not a serious contender by nature of who he is. That doesn't mean he doesn't know how to win and hasn't been around winning football. And I think sometimes we can get those things confused. And I think also the most important thing for the immediacy is getting someone who understands what it's like to be in that spotlight, which Marcus Mariota, to an extent, does. Being the number 2 pick in Tennessee is a lot different than being the number 2 pick in Washington. And I think that is something that we probably should point out a little bit more. Like, the Titans in Tennessee are important, but it ain't like the Commanders here. There's no history in Tennessee, and it's a much smaller market and a much different media environment compared to what you deal with here. But Marcus Mariota does certainly understand what it's like to be a high pick, to have expectations. He's probably only here for a year, maybe 2 anyway. So the football winning part is really about what the coaches teach him. But some of the life experience stuff, I think Marcus Mariota can help cushion and be an ear that Drake May or Jaden Daniels can talk to while not being concerned that, like, oh, this is the guy that's deciding my future. He's just a teammate who's been through it and maybe has some good advice. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. Lap is calling in. Lap, what's up, dude? Lap. 3, 2, and night-night. Well, we tried. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. While we wait for more calls, Anthony, we were about to have you chime in on your thoughts on everything, and then the Comrex kaputted. So what do you think of this trade?
I think the fact that we were able to get a third for Sam was pretty impressive. I didn't necessarily know what his trade value was going to be. I think a lot of people were estimating it was going to be a 4th, a 5th, but to be able to go out there and get a third, I think it's really telling about, I guess, Adam Peters, his influence and his ability to, pull off some of the deals that he pulled off while he was in San Fran. But I think this move just positions us to, go all in on the rookie quarterback that I'm presuming that we're going to take in the first round. So
Yeah.
I'm excited, though. I'm excited. Another big move, another splash play. So,
Yeah,
it's intriguing.
I think it also shows Adam Peters' ability to think creatively. Like, it's pretty clear he wanted a third-round pick, and maybe the best he was getting was a fourth. And so, like, I can imagine he's on the phone with Seattle, and they're like, we'll give you a fourth. We'll give you, what are the picks involved in this deal? We'll give you, I guess he's getting the Commanders are getting 102 back. But we'll give you a fourth. And he's like, I really want 78. And they're like, okay, well then you give us 78. And or you give us Howell in 102 and we'll give you 78. And Adam goes, okay, let's add one more pick swap. All right, we want 152, we'll give you 179. And now we got a deal. As opposed to just being like, no, I want this. And it being done. And a pick for player, but like the ability to get creative. And it's not like this is a genius level move, but it just shows an ability to like stick with the process, be prudent, keep tinkering with the trade until everybody gets what they want. And ultimately, Seattle gets a quarterback that I think is going to push Geno Smith. Now, is Geno better? Yeah, especially if he plays like he did 2 years ago. Is Geno going to be the number one guy there to go into things? Yes. Is it possible that Geno's and Sam has a great camp, and all of a sudden we look up in the middle of the season and Sam Howell's starting for the Seattle Seahawks after Drew Lock abandoned ship for New York, and Geno Smith crashes out? I think it's possible. I wouldn't bet on it, but it's not impossible either. So I think it's actually a good place for Sam as well, because new staff, new coordinators, new everything. He gets a fresh start. It's also he gets kind of out of the bubble here where he's got this now whatever stigma from last year he's got attached to him. And I think this is in many ways, to go back to the caller's point too, like it's a fresh start for everybody. And I think that is kind of the theme of a lot of what's happening right now is, are there players that are worth keeping around / worth bringing back? Maybe as on the merit as players, but there's something of starting over that needed to happen around here. And Dan Quinn and Adam Peters are certainly doing just that. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Now I got some calls lined up, and we'll get to you on the phones over the next half hour. Next, after a look at what's trending. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Taking your calls at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Talking all about the breaking news where we see Sam Howell departing D.C. He heads to Seattle in a trade that also has 2 pick swaps. Commanders getting picks 78 and 152 for Howell. Picks 102 and 179 going back to Seattle. Again, 301-230-0980 is the phone number. That is where you get us. And we got a bunch of folks lining up. Let's start with Nate. Nate, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Craig, man, what's going on, guys? I think this is a great move, and you gotta look at it this way. Peters, he was in the scouting department over with the Niners, so he's probably already experienced with some of what Howell has to offer. He probably maybe has some. It's not like he got here and just found out anything about him, even from what he did on the field last year. I mean, it was only his second year, so he probably was already a little bit familiar with him and already had some idea with what direction he wanted to go in. I mean, Mariota, he's like a serviceable backup, like you said, if you have the right pieces around him. But I think it's more so important to see that they're acquiring more draft capital, and all the best organizations with the most success to me go about it the draft and develop way. And it seems like you have a sharp general manager with a vision for how he wants this team to be. And if you want to have sustained success and not be how you've been in the past where you try to win the free agency period, this is the way to go about it. You bring in reasonably priced veterans, guys who, still have stuff to contribute, or young guys who are ascending and not too expensive. And then you really load up in the draft. Like, do you know how many picks the Commanders have now all together?
Today's trade didn't change their number of picks overall because they sent out 2 and brought in 2.
Okay,
but what it did do is it moved 2 of them up. So they now have 6 in the top 100, which is huge.
But what's the overall number, though? Is it like 8 or 9? Or?
I think it's 9. And do you know off the top of your head? I know you were counting them up earlier.
It's 9.
9, yeah. So 9.
Yeah,
9
that's a lot of picks.
Yeah,
that's a lot of picks. So the more swings at the plate, I'm born and raised in the D.C. area. I'm a Packers fan, but I listen to you guys every single day, all day. I'm very kind of tuned in to what's going on with this team. But, Ted Thompson used to say, you want as many swings at the plate as you can. And if you have a guy who knows how to identify talent, and you have a guy who knows how to scout players and find gems in the 5th round, 6th round, things of that nature, 4th round, you want them to have as many opportunities, or package those 3rd or 4th rounders together to move up, maybe not from 2 to 1, but, from the middle of the 2nd round to the top of the 2nd round, or from the 2nd round to the back end of the 1st round, to get a guy who they think won't last to where they are in the 2nd round. So I think, Commanders fans should be really excited with the Commanders having 9 picks and really almost so many different directions that they can go in on top of what they've done in free agency. I think is really, really smart.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Thanks for the call, Nate. Let's go to Kurt. Kurt, what you think about this Sam Howell trade to the Seattle Seahawks, and of course the Commanders getting these better picks back?
I love it. Okay. Remember, I called you yesterday talking about how Adam Peters was maybe tipping his hand. I had that question.
Yeah.
And I think that it's refreshing, first of all, let me say, to have adults running the football program.
Amen.
I think that's a good thing. And then, and with the 9 picks, more importantly than the 9 picks, are the position of those 9 picks. And I liked a little bit about what we were talking about yesterday, using that formula that you were talking about, taking a second, and maybe that last third, and come on up into the 1st round and get that tackle you was talking about.
For
I
sure.
think that's a good move for them, okay, because they really need a good young stud tackle. And I don't know at 36 if they could get that, so I'm all down with that move. Okay, but overall, I just love what Peters is doing. I think he's doing a great job. He had a vision. He's following through with that vision. And with that coaching staff, I could see them tying all this together, Craig. I could see them tying it together pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think that you're still obviously offensive talent away from being really good immediately. And thanks again for the call, Kurt. 2 great calls 2 days in a row. And I don't want to get too far out over our skis here accordingly, right? I don't want everyone to be like, oh my God, this team's going to be amazing in 2024. I think defensively they can be a pain in the ass. And I think overall they're going to be competitive. And that's a step that they didn't take last year. And it's funny because I was thinking about this during those calls, like, this is what I wish the Wizards did, right? The NBA is different. Like, I would feel better. I think what the Wizards are actually doing is fine because it's just a different sport. But the idea that you can rebuild and be competitive at the same time is a thing that I think is more important in the NFL because it is a lot more about your culture and your competitiveness. But at the same time, like, the Wizards being not competitive is why Wes Unseld got fired. And they've been better since Brian Keefe is around. But both things are going to be true. Like, what's true about the Wizards this year is going to be true about the Commanders to an extent next year, which is they just don't have enough talent to be truly competitive. They don't have a lot of blue chip players. And unless they draft CJ Stroud 2024, they're not going to be good enough at the quarterback position to be super competitive. Even if Zach Ertz turns back the clock and Bobby Wagner, I mean, last year, Bobby Wagner had a career high 186 tackles, so he didn't even have to turn back the clock. Just continues to play at a high level, turns back the clock in coverage. Luvu is a monster, and, like, Chin stays healthy. And, like, I guess defensively, could they win 10 games if a bunch of stuff went right? Yeah. But really for them to take that next step, really for them to be genuinely competitive in the NFC, nevertheless, the NFC East, they need more talent. But from a play style standpoint, they have enough right now to be what they want to be. They have enough to be a team that sucks to play against. And that's a good step considering they were 4-13 and about as easy of a win as I've seen ever covering the NFL, the 10 years I've been doing this, in the back half of last season. I cannot remember a team that was easier to beat than the back half of the season 2023 Washington Commanders. Cake every week. This team, they might lose and probably will lose more than they win. But that's because they don't have the talent. Not because they're not going to play hard. Not because they're not going to be well coached. Not because they are not going to be violent, physical to the football and be a team that, despite the record, I think fans will probably wind up being proud of. It's a prediction. We'll see. Some of y'all don't care about any of that. You just want to see wins, in which case you're probably not going to be very proud. But again, that's a talent issue, and that is a multi-year process that Adam Peters is embarking on with these 9 draft picks, and especially those 6 in the top 100. I want to touch, too, I did this a little bit earlier before we got on the radio when we were just on YouTube with Maryland's season coming to an end, cutting into our show today. I want to kind of reset the stakes here of what this trade means for the Commanders. What options does it give them, and why was it the right move? We talk about the Sam Howell trade to Seattle more next on the Hoffman Show. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Anthony, did everyone hear what just happened there, or did you dump that?
I think everybody heard that.
What happened? I was like, that's me, and I'm not talking yet.
I don't know what happened because I thought I pulled this fader up, but it was audio playing from this computer. I don't know. I'm confused.
Yeah, we got it straightened out. Anthony's got a lot going on back there. We could, you know, like football games now have alternate casts, like the Manning cast, whatever. What if we just did the whole show and people could watch you? We an Anthony alt cast.
That would be interesting.
You wouldn't want that.
Nah.
No, you just want to be able to work in peace.
Yeah, too much pressure on my.
Too much pressure.
Then I'm constantly looking.
Yeah. Anthony's on the phone. He's not paying attention again. No, he's actually doing his job. He's calling this person. He's making moves. What's he doing? His job. And he's doing a good job at it. All right. Dave Johnson on a Wizards game day at 6:30. Other than that, it is straight reaction to the breaking news of the day, which is that Sam Howell has been traded from the Washington Commanders to the Seattle Seahawks as a pick exchange to complete the deal. Ultimately, the Commanders come out with 2 higher draft picks in exchange for 2 lower ones. So pick 78 and pick 152 in, pick 102 and 179 out. So 102 becomes 78, 179 becomes 152. You go up around in each, and that pick 78 is the big one for Sam Howell in return. And I think this is really important to understand kind of what this means for this draft. It means that you now have even more ammo to move around. And I'm going to use that word around because I don't know what it means to go up or down in this draft. You could do so many different things. If you wind up on the clock at 36, you are going to have teams calling you being like, do you want to move down to 45 and also get 87 and move down? Like those kinds of trades are going to be available for you at 36. They will be available at 40. They will be available for you at 67. And they will now be available for you at 78. But what I do think this makes even more likely is the possibility of trading back up higher into the first round than people realize. And I'm going to be really explicit about this again. If you combine picks 36 and 40 on the Jimmy Johnson draft chart, which is the point system that a version of the point system that everybody in the NFL uses to try to make trades fair, that everyone's operating as like, I feel like a fourth will do the trick to push this trade to even. It's like, no, we're going to assign every pick a points value. And then we try to, on draft day, if we're moving picks, assign or take those values and make them as even as possible. Obviously, it can be, depending on what picks you're moving, impossible because you might wind up by 10, 15 points off or 20 points off, but you don't have another pick to move. And then it's up to the team to decide, like, yeah, this is worth it or no, it's not. So it's not an exact science, but it is a mathematical formula. And if you combine pick 36 and pick 40 together, the point value of that puts you squarely at pick 13.5. So it puts you at a value points-wise that is between what pick 13 is worth and pick 14 is worth. Meaning that you could call teams, I would say, as high as 12. 12 happens to be Denver. I don't know that they're looking to trade back. But let's say they're like, man, we need a bunch of players. We're willing to do this. Or, they trade up to another team, and that team's willing to trade back again. You could say, hey, do you want picks 36 and 40 together to go up, and we'll trade? We're now sitting at 12, and Olu Fashanu's on the board at left tackle. Joe Alt is on the board. Probably not, but who knows? Amarius Mims is certainly going to be on the board. J.C. Latham from Alabama is going to be on the board probably around that time, and all of those players are worth that pick. Or if you don't want to give up 36 and 40, and you really want to try to stay in that range to pick up another edge player or a wide receiver that now all of a sudden it looks like is climbing the priority list. By the way, breaking news, Curtis Samuel not coming back to Washington. Curtis headed to Buffalo. Love that move for the Bills. We can talk more generic NFL free agency and kind of what it means, or a lot of other teams and how they're stacking up tomorrow. But let's say that receiver suddenly is climbing your list of needs in a draft that is loaded with receivers. And so you're like, I don't want to give up 36 and 40, but I do want to get back into the end of the first round. Well, now you compare 36 and 67, get back into the end of the first round, and maybe it's Tyler Guyton, maybe Amarius Mims falls into that 20 range. Maybe it's another one of these tackles. Talisi Fuaga, probably going to be on that higher end, but who knows? And all of those guys are now in play for you because you have the flexibility to move without giving up like all of your rookie spots. You still are going to have a massive draft class if you package 2 picks for 1. You got 9 now. Oh, we only came out with 8. You're still going to wind up with 10 rookies on the team because there'll probably be a couple undrafted free agent guys that make the club. So that combined with, what are we at now? 17 free agents, 15 from the outside with F.A. Obata and Jeremy Reeves re-signing.
And Jameson.
So maybe we're 18 free agents now. I think F.A. might have been 18, the latest guy that I saw, because they signed that linebacker as well, who's a special teams guy from Detroit.
Yep.
And I think we were at 15, whatever the number is. Like you got that plus 10 rookies. We're literally flipping more than half the 53. And they kept guys like Kaz Allen, remember him? From UCLA, the undrafted free agent. He's still around, as are some of the other undrafted guys that were on practice squad last year. So you're talking about 30-ish new players, even if you combine picks and trade up. That's what this trade does. And you did it for a guy that is QB3 for you. And you flip the building, and you kind of get that fresh start, and that's not on Sam, so to speak. But it's just an endless list of good things to restart and refresh. And that is ultimately what this trade is about. You got good value. You got weapons to use in your arsenal to either select good young football players in a draft that is loaded in the top 100. We talked to Charles Davis earlier in the show, and he agreed that he's got like 150 guys before it gets a little thin for him. But a lot of teams have 90 to 100, and then it's not the same 90 to 100. So if we're checking out who's on everyone's board, that top 150. But let's say Charles is right. Let's say it is 150 guys. Okay, well, you just turned pick 179 into 152. So you still got another crack at that. Via this trade. High-quality football players. And by the way, at some positions that I think you could use it for the long term. Receiver is stupid deep in this draft. There are some good tackles. The edge class is starting to, people are starting to go, actually, this edge class, while there's not like a top-flight pass rusher in this class, there's no Aiden Hutchinson in this class, and there's only so many first-rounders. I think people are starting to like the depth at edge a little bit more in this class the more they study it. That's a position where you could use a little bit of a youth movement with all of these one-year free agent guys being brought in, or in FA's case, brought back. Again, receiver, there's some tight ends later that are okay pieces that you're going to want to add. Running backs, if you want to get a scat back type, back players in this draft in the 3rd, 4th round. So the places where there still are holes to plug for this team, there is now a ton of ammo to do it. And this trade, I think, gives them a much higher quality to be able to do that in exchange for a guy that, while, yes, I don't think he got a fair shake here. And this is not really about Sam, but it's about where the roster is right now. And QB3 is not a place that you need a guy who has value. That's an emergency situation. And thus, doing this and getting things of value for a guy that does not have a lot of value to you, even though he is valuable, is fantastic. And I'll say this real quick before we get back to the phones at 301-230-0980. I said it earlier in the show, but I'll say it again. This is not fair to Sam Howell because I think Sam Howell can play in this league. But it's not Adam Peters' responsibility to figure out how good Sam Howell is. It's his responsibility to do what's best for the Washington Commanders. And there is no doubt that he did that today. Your calls, 301-230-0980, before Dave joins us on a Wizards game day next. the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. More on Sam Howell being traded to the Seahawks in just a moment. But, Anthony, I do want to just say real quick for the people, we tell you to subscribe on YouTube because it's a fun way to watch the show when you're not in your car. Obviously, if you drive around and you listen to us, we absolutely love that. We're a radio show first. That is the nature of what our bosses pay us to do. We'd love for you to listen on the free Odyssey app as well. It's obviously clear and digital as opposed to your AM signal, but however you choose to. I will say, Anthony, for those people that have, which now at this point I feel like is most new cars have Apple CarPlay. And even older cars, you can get a little screen and it's easy to convert. But the Odyssey app just launched a new Apple CarPlay feature. So now you can, it not only you could always, if you have Bluetooth or, plug it into your phone, you could on your phone hit play on the stream and nice and easy. But now we have made it even easier. We have Apple CarPlay enabled with the Odyssey app. So you can install that on your CarPlay screen. Bada boom, bada bing. Nice, crystal clear. Listen to the show as you drive around. But YouTube is special for a day like today. Unfortunately, Maryland's season came crashing to an end. By the way, Anthony, I don't think it's good when you are trailing by more than you've scored in the second half of a conference tournament game.
Yeah, that was bad.
When you've scored 38 and are down 40, not good. That was Maryland today. Yikes, bro. But anyway, as that was happening, and we obviously carry Maryland hoops and football and everything here on the radio, and the Sam Howell news broke, we went live, and the show essentially started on YouTube. So highly recommend, in case of emergency, break glass in case of emergency situation, you want your fix of your sports talk when news breaks, especially between the hours of 4 and 7, even if we're not on the air, there's a really good chance we're going to go there. I also simulcast that live on my page, at Craig Hoffman. So make sure you subscribe, at Craig Hoffman, at the Team 980 on YouTube. And then, again, if you like the show and you want more of it, when you get home, you're driving home listening, flip on your smart TV at the Team 980, and you can watch the show. But, Anthony, you had a question, I think, in the break that you wanted to ask? What was your question?
Yeah, so my question was, and it was basically based off the roster overhaul that Adam Peters and company have been doing. More than literally half of our roster are going to be gone. Yeah. And it just got me thinking back to, when Ron Rivera said these guys are probably going to be here for the foreseeable future. And if the next administration comes in, I want my Super Bowl ring. And I'm like, the guys you drafted, the guys that you brought in via free agency, a lot of those guys are not going to be here. So I don't think you deserve that Super Bowl ring.
I don't think Ron's getting his ring, Anthony. Tell you what, if they win the Super Bowl and Ron wants his ring, I don't care. They've won the Super Bowl. That ain't my problem. But I do not think that Ron Rivera is getting that Super Bowl ring. Think about it, too. Think about the guys that they've kept. And this seems unfair. This seems on the verge of mean because we're going to dump on it. It feels like we're dumping on Rivera. But think about the guys that they have retained, right? Obviously, there's last year's rookie class.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it was last year's class. Jamin's still around for now. But most of their free agents and most of, are there more? Here's the ultimate question. Certainly by the time 2025 rolls around. But even this year, are there going to be more guys that Gruden and company brought in than Rivera and company brought in? They've replaced the kicker, the long snapper, right? Mm-hmm. So, there's some Rivera guys gone. Allen, because you've got Allen, Payne, McLaurin,
Tress,
Reeves.
Revo, yep.
Cosby was a Rivera pick.
Yeah.
You got no one in the quarterback room. You will have B-Rob and Chris Rodriguez. Tight end room, you're going to have basically Bates, yeah, and we'll see.
Turner.
We'll see if Cole Turner and Armani Rogers are around. There's a chance neither of them are.
Yeah.
So, it might take till 2025, but if you were to cut the 2023 3 rookie class. They don't count because they're in the second year of the rookie deals.
Yeah.
And then you compare like the veteran free agent signings and previous draft picks. It's really close.
Yeah.
Which is horrendously sad.
Yeah, that's bad.
So,
bad
yeah,
stuff.
your foundation. It's ironic, too, because he talked about laying the foundation. And I think the analogy that I've made the most the last couple of days in free agency, and I would say that this Howell trade is a continuation of that, is this is them laying a new foundation. They took the foundation and were like, give me a jackhammer. Da-da-da-da-da. Destroy the foundation. Get that foundation all the way the bleep out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And we're laying some new concrete in this joint. And they have. And again, is it going to be, these guys that they're signing now, even a Bobby Wagner, is he going to be here when the house is fully built and people are coming over for the Super Bowl party? If this goes well. Probably not. Probably not. But the people in the house will be like, you know who's really important? Bobby Wagner helped us build this house. Yep. Zach Ertz helped us build this house. Marcus Mariota helped us build this house. Frankie Louvu might be around. Jeremy Chin might be around. So it's not that there's none of these guys. Dorrance Armstrong certainly could be around. Tyler Biotish could be around.
Yep.
3 to 5 years from now. I would hope that all those guys are around. They're all young enough and potentially talented enough that they could be long-term guys. But realistically, like Wagner and some of the older guys they've run in, Ertz, certainly, those guys aren't going to be here long-term. I mean, shoot, if Bobby Wagner's going to get 186 tackles this season, maybe he will. Maybe he just plays till maybe London Fletcher got here when he was 32 and played till he was 38. So maybe Bobby Wagner is Fletch 2.0 in that regard. But at the end of the day, like, this is about laying a foundation, and it is genuinely hilarious that the last coach, like, talked about, well, I'm laying the foundation so that the next guys can come in and, maybe I'll get a Super Bowl ring. Nope. It's just like when you talked about, I'm managing, not coaching, and you were a terrible manager. Yeah. You were also a bad concrete layer. I wonder what ESPN thought of him as an analyst.
It was so ironic seeing him as an analyst talking about what the Commanders should do with the number 2 pick.
It was also hilarious watching the YouTube comment. I got like a bunch of random people being like, yo, Ron was on SportsCenter the other day saying they should take Jaden Daniels. That convinced me we should take Drake May.
Yeah. I think that's where I'm at, too. Not going to lie. Ron jinxed us, man. I
mean, maybe he gave you gave you the roadmap, what you need. 301-230-0980. All right, let's try Lap again. Lap, finish us up on the Commanders today before we get to Dave Johnson and your Wizards coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Hey.
Mariota. Why are you upset about the Marcus Mariota pickup?
I think it could have been some other picks. I mean, not picks, I'm sorry, free agencies that we could have gotten him. I never really was a big fan of his. But, I mean, he was serviceable backup, so it's okay. I mean,
yeah.
I still think we need 3 quarterbacks, though, so I don't know where or if they're going to get another one after they draft one, too. So I guess we'll have to see. But so far, so good, man. I'm excited overall. So I just can't wait for the draft to see what we're going to get. So.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks, Lab. I mean, to be very clear when it comes to Mariota, I do not feel strongly about Marcus Mariota. I am not like, yep, he's essential. What a great pickup. But I do think that he's solid. And if I had my druthers about it, I would have rather Jacoby Brissett come back. I still am apparently the only person that thinks that Ryan Tannehill would have been good. But I think Tannehill's a better player, and he's had more success. And if he is willing to mentor, then I think he's great. But I don't know that was true. I don't think Brissett wanted to come back. So it's not about just, we can pay him a couple more million and he would have come back. He was a free agent who got to do whatever he wanted to. And Mariota loves Brian Johnson, is like a good go-between for him in the room. Brian Johnson, of course, the assistant head coach and pass game coordinator here with Washington, and having someone who can speak the language and who knows how that guy ticks and can help bring everybody together is a great thing to have. And I will say, I said this earlier. I don't remember if it was earlier on the show or whether it was on Take Command. I've talked to microphones far too much today. But Marcus Mariota has more starting quarterback experience than anyone else in that quarterback room. For all of the experience that Cliff Kingsbury has as a quarterback and quarterback's coach, he has very little NFL starting experience, very little time spent in an NFL pocket. Brian Johnson has, I think, none. I don't think, like, he played quarterback at Utah, but I don't think he ever made the league. David Blau has played a little bit, very little, nowhere close to the number of snaps that Marcus Mariota has. And so up and down, Anthony Lynn obviously played running back in the league, but he doesn't know what it's like to play quarterback in the NFL. Marcus Mariota does. And so while Jacoby Brissett and Ryan Tannehill and Tyrod Taylor and some of these other guys, Gardner Minshew, whatever your backup quarterback du jour that was your favorite, all those guys could say that. That is the thing that you're ultimately after here. Now, I do think with quarterback 3, I think you're after the David Blau type. I think you're after a guy who's just really, really good in the meeting room. And, Jake Fromm could be that, by the way, who everybody fell in love with during training camp last year. He's a great QB3, super smart, probably a future coach. Like, I'm fine with him as quarterback 3. If you're on QB3, I'm not really looking for you to be a player, because if you're playing, we're screwed. That ship is already sailed. At that point, I'm calling up 2024 Joe Flacco, who signed with the Colts, I believe, today. And like, I'm saying, all right, let's get the vet off the couch if we're in the middle of the season and trying to be competitive, because our starter's down for a couple weeks, or got us to a point in the season where we're still alive and now we need a miracle. Other than that, I want a guy who's good in the meeting room, and that can come from a lot of different places. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Of course, the Team 980 is your home for Wizards basketball and on Wizards game days. We talk to the voice of the Wizards, Dave Johnson. Can they get it back on track tonight in Houston after a very disappointing showing in Memphis? And can they get some of their guys back? Plus, there's Wizards. It's not free agency. Like, my inbox right now is Commanders PR announcing all of these signings. And there was a signing for the Wizards, too. We'll talk about it with Dave next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. With you until 7 o'clock tonight. Then we got a little BetMGM tonight. And then we give way to the one and only Dave Johnson. But, of course, on a Wizards game day, we get the radio party started here on the Hoffman Show.
Time to get the radio party started.
Blocked by Bilal Coulibaly. Oh, boy, did he stuff him. Left wing pull. It's there. Oh, that's a pool party. The basket slam right in. Oh, they're stealing the slam. You better go on. Intercepted by Kispert. Kispert now foul line. Oh, slam. Ooh, that'll jar your preserves.
It's time for Dave Johnson on a Wizards game day.
Kuzma for three. Oh, it's there. It's there. Big shot.
On the Hoffman Show.
Hey, you better go on.
Dave with us from Houston as the ACC tournament continues at Capital One Arena. 8 o'clock tip tonight, 7:45, the pregame. Dave, how is Houston treating you?
You know, Houston is great, although I have to keep remembering it's on Central Time Zone because yesterday I was with our good friends Grant and Danny, or Tuesday, and I was still shaving because of that hour time difference. And I hope I'm not late for the Hoffman party tonight because, again, I know it's only 1 hour. But I really struggle with it sometimes. So it is 6:30 on the East Coast or whatever it is, and it's only 5:30 here as we get set for this game in Houston against the Rockets. And you know, before you ask it, it needs to be much better tonight. That was a real missed opportunity on Tuesday. And look, they owned up for it. I think Kyle Kuzma, the strongest statement was they not professional, disrespected the game. Now, again, as people listen to this, it's human nature. It's not like they collectively said, all right, let's just, go to take a tour of Graceland this afternoon and we can goof around because the Grizzlies are going to be missing 8 players or whatever it was, and we could take it easy. But, they just didn't bring it like they did need to bring it at the start. And they know better than that, and it happened, and you move on tonight.
Yeah, no, it was definitely not the performance that everyone was looking for. I think you get so excited. Like, there just aren't many games that the Wizards this year are going to be favored in. Certainly fewer on the road, and then that is ultimately the result. Was there any other interesting comments to you after that game, whether it's from Brian Keefe or other players, in terms of what went wrong and the accountability piece of it?
Yeah, just they look, they owned up for it. In other words, sometimes when things start, when a game starts, it's not like they don't know what's going on. It's just that sometimes it's a train that gets away from them, and they needed to start the game like they've been starting games, like they've been playing. And but there's no again, it's everyone has a bad day, or maybe they don't have we can do a 4 or 5 hour radio show. Maybe the first hour isn't the greatest, but we finish strong or whatever. But this is a different business, and they know that. There's just no excuse for it on Tuesday, and so there's nothing they can say that say, well, we didn't bring the energy because of the second of back-to-back. No, it wasn't the second of back-to-back. They didn't bring, the energy because they were. Look, we have 11 wins. This is not a team that walks around and says, "Oh, wow, 2-game winning streak. Now we got this." This is
right.
Not, the mentality of this team. It just. They just didn't. They got behind too much, and they, Having said that, it was going for a while in the fourth quarter. The way the Wizards actually should have been the better team talent-wise if you looked at it on paper, and the script was playing out where the Wizards had never led in the game and had opportunities late to just steal, and that would have been a big-time theft. Like you needed to hire 6 lawyers to explain the theft because the Grizzlies deserved to win that game. And in the end, they did. And look, this team knows better, and I expect better tonight against the Houston team that, again, I've always loved Fred VanVleet and the way he plays. I mean, he's an example of, undrafted player in 2016. And it's what Kyle Kuzma talked about. When you're playing a bunch of Grizzlies guys that they're ready to give blood to stay in the NBA. We talked all season long, and part of the story with the Wizards is players with that attitude. It's just that they didn't have that right attitude on Tuesday, but I expect that attitude back tonight.
Yeah, Dave Johnson with us again from Houston. But Dave, I guess first of all, before we talk about the new signing. It's not a new player necessarily, but someone joining the team and kind of what you expect there. What do we expect in terms of health tonight? Because the Wiz have been without some of their bigs, which doesn't hurt the cause or doesn't help the cause either. Where are we at on Rashawn Holmes and Marvin Bagley's potential returns?
Well, unfortunately, neither will play. And again, I don't use that as an excuse for the other night against the Grizzlies.
Yeah, just looking for the health update.
Right, but having said that, if we could have had this team is against Miami, overextended in terms of the rebounding, and they've been getting more rebounding efforts than they probably should. Or what I'm saying is just the hard work that's gone on the boards. Didn't show up on Tuesday night. If the Wizards could have had one of those players, that certainly would have helped because again, this team is about defense, rebounding, and get it and go. Well, if you don't get it, then you can't go, and it didn't go. So tonight, that's going to add to the challenge for the Wizards because again, no Marvin Bagley and no Rashawn Holmes. Although Holmes was doing some work this morning at shoot around, so it's encouraging. I think that's going to be closer that he comes back. I think. I mean, that's just my guess.
All right. And then we get Tristan Vukcevic, which hopefully I'm saying right. Vukcevic is what Basketball Reference has. Dave, do you have a proper pronunciation on the young, where is he from? The young, he was born in Italy. I don't think that name's Italian, though.
Well, maybe they call him Serbian Swedish as well. So maybe he's just European Union in general. But actually, a Serbian soccer friend of mine, Mike Stankovic, called me yesterday, but I think he mispronounced it. So I think you said it correctly. And again, Vukcevic is what we're going with. Vukcevic is what we're going to say in the pregame, and that's what we've been told. So
okay, there we go.
But by the way, when a 7-foot individual says "say my name differently," you say it differently. So until he tells you to say it differently.
To be clear, Tristan, we just don't know yet. We're not 100% sure. If you would like to tell us, by all means, sir, by all means. But this is the Wizards for fans that may not be familiar. Wizards second-round pick this past year, played his European season, and now has signed with the Wizards on a multi-year deal and is headed over. How quickly is he going to be available, and what do we expect based off what we saw in Summer League last year?
Well, I don't know how quickly he's going to be available. Certainly, obviously, we have one more game on this road trip to Chicago, so I could pretty much guarantee. Well, I shouldn't say anything. I really don't know how quickly. That would be very quickly to get him for Saturday's game against Chicago. But the great thing about this is it gives the Wizards a chance to evaluate what they have in Tristan Vukcevic. And again, with he comes in at 18 and he again, the numbers are not great, but you could see with Real Madrid at the time, which is one of the big, basketball powers in Europe, and the Euro League, which is the second best league to the NBA. Now, there's a big gap between the two leagues. So it's not like you can say, well, he did well in the Euro League, so obviously he'll be a success in the NBA. That's not how it works. And quite frankly, he's still a young player, so he's not even played a big role yet with Partizan, which was his club in Serbia. But you can't teach size. You can't teach the ability to spread the floor, which I think he does have from what we know from Summer League. He had a very good Summer League, and Summer League is very competitive because you're playing against everyone who's trying to make it in the NBA. So this gives us a bit of a shop window. Because we know, and again, let me be clear when I'm saying this, you can have players that are drafted in the second round or late first round that really become stars in this league. I'm not saying that's going to happen with him, but that's why you have scouting. That's why you have evaluation. Does he, because the opportunity gets here, shows he can do more here. He certainly has the athletic skills. It's going to be exciting. It's another part of the exciting part down the stretch for the Wizards. And again, that's what we knew was going to be exciting this season. We knew that when you and I would have conversations in March, we wouldn't be talking about a playoff push. What we'd be talking about is the players who developed. And, now we're talking about, I'm excited to see what he can do against NBA competition if they choose to do that.
Yep, so we'll see. Tristan Vukcevic on his way over. We'll see just how quickly he is in a Wizards uniform. Won't be tonight in Houston, but if you want to listen to that game, Dave on the call, pregame starting coming up an hour from right now. Dave, you got an hour. I don't know what that means for you in terms of time change, but it's and 1 hour from now, we expect the radio party to officially begin. Thanks as always, sir, and we'll talk to you next week.
Well, it will officially begin because now I feel like I'm an hour late for everything. But anyway, I can't wait to get home. I can't wait to get home.
Very soon, very soon. As always, our pleasure. Dave Johnson, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Quick look at what's trending. Then when we get back, wrap up a busy day and get you with a few really great clips during real things, real people said into real microphones. Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Man, what a 24 hours, Anthony. You know, last night, we get the Bobby Wagner news before our final segment. And so we literally run off the air with breaking news. Just we get in the takes, the reaction, the analysis that we can, and then we were off. I actually was like, dang, I was happy that we were off because I had something after the show, but I was mad that it was that day. I was like, can we just move things around? And one of these days where we're just like, what are we going to talk about? Can I have something to do that night and we end early? No, we do it on the busiest week of the year for news in our time slot, perhaps, NFL free agency. And sure enough, we get one. And then before we can get back on the show today, news breaks again with Sam Howell. So early, in fact, that we start the show early, online, digital only, just to get in on the craziness, get in on the mix. So the good news is, we don't want you to miss anything. So I'm putting the digital only open, if you will, up on YouTube right now at Craig Hoffman, and put it up on Team 980's page in just a moment. You can rewind the full show as well in the Odyssey app or on YouTube. And though, Anthony, you also are putting that up in the podcast feed, correct?
Yeah, I just don't have. Yeah, once I get the audio.
Okay, so I'll get that to you ASAP. I thought that you had a way of getting it, which we don't even talk about on the air. But that's okay. I have it. I will send it to you. So all of that, if you missed it, whether you're an audio or a video consumer of the show, we got you covered in the on-demand platforms. We started that show that half hour before we got on the actual radio, which I guess you can't rewind to that in the Odyssey app, but in the Odyssey app, that podcast will be up soon. We talked about like the stakes of the deal and what it means for Washington. And I also asked the question, like, did Sam Howell get a fair shake in DC? So if you want takes on all of that, definitely check that out. We also, more football talk. If you want take command reaction to what Washington had done as of 10 a.m. this morning, we talked about it. And I think that's one piece of the Sam Howell puzzle that we haven't really closed here, Anthony, is something we talked about on Take Command, which is I literally go, hey, Logan, are you going to let me have talk radio fun for a moment? And he's like, oh, boy, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, I think Sam Howell's a better quarterback than Marcus Mariota. So if the number 2 pick, let's say it's Jaden, let's say it's Drake, whoever isn't ready, do you play Sam? And he's like, yeah. Like for him, it was a no-brainer. And I was like, oh. And he's like, I've been around Dan Quinn enough to know that he will. Like he won't, like, will Marcus probably go in as QB2, but if it's clear that Sam is better, then and he's better than both guys, like, and that number 2 pick isn't close and he's not ready, then he would have played Howell. And so what I think, the reason I bring that up and why I think this is a good thing that they make the trade is not because I'm like, oh, yeah, they got worse as a football team if that guy has to play. It's that you get rid of the lingering question. And I think so much of what they've done is just like, let's move on. And there's so much power in the mental clarity of just being able to move on and be like, we don't have to worry about this. We don't have to worry about any contingency plans. We don't have to worry about what if Sam Howell's good? What if he's bad? What if it's this? What if, it's like, we don't have to worry about it. He wasn't our guy. We think he's pretty good. Someone else probably likes him. We know we're going in a different direction. He's got value more to them than to us. So let's trade things, a.k.a. the picks are more valuable to us. Let's get them picks. And that, my friends, is good management. Anything else, Anthony, or are you ready for real things?
I think that is everything.
All right. Well, then I will just say real quick, tomorrow, our show is really short again. We're on from 4 till 5:15. Anthony is out. Matthew Essig will be in. So zany stuff could happen. You never know. But we'll give you as much as we can between 4 and 5:15 tomorrow. We wrap up this version with real things real people said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, Anthony, we don't have much time, so you get to pick one real thing and play it. Or give me like 2 options. I know we did.
Kirk, or I think we should do Kirk.
Yeah, I think we do. Kirk Cousins talking about number 8, which Kyle Pitts currently wears at his press conference. Very funny story.
He was funny about it. I said, I'll write a check, whatever, foundation. I'm not going to let you just give me the number. I want to make it worth your while, make a donation, whatever it needs to be. And he said, I just want, targets every game. He said, he was joking, he kind of winked. So I joked with him. I said, good answer.
That's funny.
Cracks me up, man.
Kirk is a funny guy. He's a goofball. He's a bit of a dork, but he's a funny dork. And he's pretty good at football. Also, I don't think Kyle Pitts is joking.
He's serious.
I think Kyle Pitts is like, I would like targets every game because I'm very good at football. And the last coach didn't think it was important for me to get targets. So I, Kirk, would like targets. Wink. Maybe that wink wasn't a funny ha. Maybe it's like, or I'm going to stuff you in a locker. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for listening to The Hoffman Show.